Modern agriculture looks perfect from the outside. Massive machines moving with centimeter precision. Seeds engineered at the molecular level. Satellites mapping every square meter of land. Algorithms predicting harvest months in advance. From a distance, it feels like humanity finally mastered food production. But then something strange happens. Despite all this technology, productivity in many regions stops growing. Costs rise every year. Crops become more dependent on fertilizers. Droughts cause bigger losses. Soil holds less water. Roots grow shallow. Diseases spread faster. Farmers invest more and earn less. This is not happening in one country. It is not limited to small farms. It happens in industrial agriculture, in developing regions, and in some of the most advanced farming systems on Earth. And it is not caused by climate alone. It is not caused by bad seeds. It is not caused by laziness or lack of knowledge. It is caused by a structural mistake that became normal. A mistake so common that most people no longer question it. Modern agriculture treats soil as a dead platform, not as a living system, not as a biological engine, but as a mechanical surface that only needs chemicals added on top. For decades, farming education, machinery design, and industrial practices have followed one simple idea: if you supply nutrients and control pests, plants will grow. Everything else is secondary. This mindset changed food production forever. It increased yields, it reduced hunger, it built modern civilization, but it also created a hidden collapse underground. Soil is not dirt, it is one of the most complex ecosystems on the planet. A single gram can contain billions of microorganisms: fungi, bacteria, protozoa, nematodes, insects, roots, organic matter, minerals, water, air. All interacting constantly. Healthy soil breathes. It transports nutrients naturally. It stores carbon. It regulates water. It protects plants from disease. It builds structure year after year. When this system works, crops become resilient. They tolerate stress. They grow deeper roots. They require fewer inputs. They remain productive even under difficult conditions. When this system is damaged, everything becomes artificial. Plants survive, but only with constant external support. Fertilizers replace biology. Pesticides replace balance. Irrigation replaces structure. Fuel replaces roots. At first, the system still works. Yields remain high. Technology hides the damage, but underground, something irreversible begins. Heavy machinery compresses the soil year after year. Microorganisms die from lack of oxygen. Organic matter declines. Soil particles lose their natural structure. Water stops infiltrating properly. Roots hit invisible barriers. Carbon escapes into the atmosphere. The field still looks normal from above. Green crops, straight rows, modern equipment, but underground, the ecosystem collapses slowly. Farmers respond logically. They apply more fertilizer, more chemicals, more passes with machinery, more irrigation, more technology. Each solution treats the symptom, not the cause. This creates a feedback loop. Damaged soil needs more fertilizer. More fertilizer weakens biology. Weaker biology reduces structure. Poor structure increases compaction. Compaction limits roots. Limited roots reduce nutrient uptake. Reduced uptake increases fertilizer dependency. The system becomes addicted to inputs. Production continues, but efficiency disappears. In many regions, yields increase only when input costs explode. That is not progress. That is debt disguised as productivity. Research from multiple agricultural universities shows the same pattern: two neighboring fields, same crop, same seed, same climate, same fertilizer. One field produces significantly more. The difference is not technology. It is soil structure, biological activity, porosity, root depth, organic matter. Things that machines do not fix. Things that modern agriculture often ignores. The tragedy is that this mistake was never intentional. It emerged slowly. Bigger tractors reduced labor. Deeper tillage controlled weeds. Chemical fertilizers boosted yields. Monoculture simplified logistics. Short-term profit rewarded speed. Each decision made sense individually. Together, they redesigned agriculture into a mechanical system running on biology it no longer protects. Most farmers are not destroying their soil on purpose. They are trapped inside a system that measures success by yield per hectare this season, not by soil health in 20 years. So the damage continues quietly, invisible, ignored, normalized, until productivity stalls, until costs become unbearable, until climate stress exposes the weakness, until farms become factories that consume land instead of regenerating it. In the next part, we will focus on the most destructive physical consequence of this mindset: soil compaction. How modern machinery accelerates it, why it blocks roots like concrete, and how millions of hectares are being cultivated on top of biologically dead layers without anyone noticing. Soil compaction is one of the most underestimated forms of damage in modern agriculture. It does not look dramatic. It does not kill crops instantly. It does not appear in satellite images. And most of the time, it remains completely invisible to the eye. Yet it is one of the strongest forces limiting productivity worldwide. Compaction happens when soil particles are pressed together so tightly that the natural spaces between them disappear. Those spaces are not empty. They are supposed to contain air, water, microorganisms, and roots. When they collapse, the soil stops functioning as a living system and becomes a dense mass that behaves more like concrete than earth. Modern machinery is the main accelerator of this process. Tractors, harvesters, sprayers, and transport vehicles are heavier than ever. A single combine harvester can weigh more than 20 tons. When this weight passes repeatedly over the same fields, especially under moist conditions, the pressure is transferred deep into the soil profile. The surface may look normal. Crops still emerge, leaves still turn green, but several centimeters below, sometimes 30 or 40, a compacted layer forms. This layer acts as a physical wall. Roots reach it and stop. Instead of growing deep, they spread sideways. They become shorter, thicker, deformed. Their ability to absorb water and nutrients collapses. During dry periods, plants suffer because they cannot access deeper moisture. During heavy rain, water accumulates on the surface because it cannot infiltrate. The field begins to behave like a sealed container. Waterlogging after storms, drought stress during heat waves, nutrient losses through runoff, erosion, lower microbial activity, all caused by a layer no one sees. Farmers often misinterpret the symptoms. They see yellow leaves and assume nitrogen deficiency. They see weak growth and assume bad genetics. They see uneven stands and blame the planter. They see drought stress and increase irrigation. The real problem remains underground. Soil compaction does not disappear on its own. Rain does not fix it. Time does not fix it. In many soils, natural recovery can take decades. In heavily mechanized systems, recovery never happens because the pressure continues year after year. In some regions, researchers have measured bulk density levels so high that roots physically cannot penetrate deeper than 20 centimeters. Crops are essentially growing in a thin artificial layer of life above dead soil. This transforms farming into a fragile system. Any stress becomes dangerous. A short drought, a delayed fertilizer application, a heat wave, a pest outbreak. Healthy soils absorb shocks. Compacted soils amplify them. Ironically, modern agriculture increases machinery size to become more efficient. Fewer passes, larger implements, faster operations, but weight does not disappear. It concentrates, and soil does not forget pressure. Another factor worsens the problem: timing. Fields are often trafficked when they are wet. Moist soil particles slide easily and collapse into dense structures. One pass of heavy machinery under wet conditions can cause more damage than 10 passes on dry soil. Yet planting windows are short. Harvest seasons are tight. Logistics demand speed, so the soil pays the price. Subsoiling and deep tillage are often used as emergency solutions. They break compacted layers temporarily. They restore root penetration for a season or two. But without changing traffic patterns, machine weight, and soil biology, the compaction returns. Sometimes worse. Tillage without biological recovery is like breaking concrete with a hammer while continuing to pour new cement every year. There is also a hidden economic cost. Compacted fields require more fertilizer, because roots cannot access nutrients efficiently. More water, because infiltration is poor. More fuel, because tillage becomes harder. More chemicals, because stressed plants are vulnerable. Yield becomes dependent on constant intervention. Profit margins shrink, and the land slowly loses its natural productive potential. Many farmers operate entire careers without ever seeing a soil profile. They see plants, machines, data screens, yields, but they never see the wall their crops are hitting underground. In the next part, the focus shifts to something even more fragile than soil structure: the living community inside the soil. The microorganisms that make nutrients available. The fungi that connect plants. The biological network that modern agriculture unintentionally dismantled. Because compaction does not just block roots, it suffocates life. Soil does not function because of minerals alone. It functions because it is alive. Under every healthy field exists an invisible network more complex than any human technology. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, arthropods, algae, and plant roots form a system that regulates nutrition, water, structure, and disease resistance. This living network is the true engine of agriculture. Plants do not simply absorb nutrients that sit freely in the soil. Most nutrients are chemically locked inside organic matter and minerals. Microorganisms release them slowly through biological processes. They transform nitrogen, solubilize phosphorus, transport micronutrients, and exchange resources with roots. Fungi extend the effective root system of plants by kilometers per hectare. Bacteria fix atmospheric nitrogen. Predators control populations. Organic residues become stable carbon. It is not chaos, it is infrastructure. But modern agriculture treats this infrastructure as optional. Deep tillage destroys fungal networks. Chemical overuse reduces microbial diversity. Monoculture starves specialized organisms. Lack of organic residues removes food sources. Compaction removes oxygen. Biology collapses silently. At first, nothing dramatic happens. Crops still grow because fertilizers replace natural nutrient cycling. But the system loses resilience. When biology is strong, plants cooperate with microbes. They trade sugars for nutrients. They receive protection from pathogens. They regulate stress responses. When biology is weak, plants are alone. They depend entirely on what humans inject into the soil. This changes the entire energy balance of farming. Instead of sunlight feeding ecosystems which feed crops, fossil fuels feed factories that feed fields. The soil becomes a passive container. In some intensive systems, microbial biomass has dropped more than 50% compared to natural soils. Mycorrhizal fungi networks are fragmented or absent. Carbon content declines steadily. The soil still holds plants, but it no longer supports life efficiently. This has consequences that appear unrelated at first. Nutrients leach into groundwater instead of being recycled. Diseases spread faster because natural competitors disappear. Plants become less efficient at using water. Fertilizer efficiency drops. Greenhouse gas emissions increase. Each problem is treated separately. More chemicals for disease, more fertilizer for deficiencies, more irrigation for drought, more technology for control, but the biological engine remains broken. In natural ecosystems, soil improves every year. Organic matter accumulates. Structure stabilizes. Life multiplies. Productivity increases without external inputs. In degraded agricultural systems, soil ages backwards. It becomes simpler, harder, poorer. Farmers often notice that older fields require more fertilizer than younger ones. That yields stagnate despite improved seeds. That diseases appear more frequently. These are not random patterns. They are symptoms of biological collapse. Once the microbial community is damaged, recovery becomes slow and uncertain. Some organisms return quickly, others take years. Some never return if conditions remain hostile. And hostile conditions are common. Bare soil under sun. Synthetic nitrogen dominating nutrition. Repeated disturbance. Chemical residues. Low organic carbon. It is not a single mistake. It is a system design. A design optimized for short-term control, not long-term stability. Modern agriculture has become extremely good at forcing plants to grow. It has become extremely bad at letting ecosystems function. The irony is that advanced technology could support biological systems. Precision tools could reduce damage. Sensors could monitor soil health. Data could optimize organic inputs. But most systems use technology to override nature, not cooperate with it. So productivity becomes fragile, like a skyscraper built on sand. Tall, impressive, unstable. In the next part, the focus moves to the economic mechanism that locks farms into this broken model: fertilizer dependency. How synthetic nutrients replaced biological cycles. Why increasing doses bring diminishing returns. And how entire agricultural regions became trapped in a system that cannot sustain itself without constant chemical support. Synthetic fertilizers changed agriculture forever. They allowed food production to scale beyond natural limits. They reduced famine. They supported population growth. They transformed farming into an industrial system. But they also rewired how soil works. Before synthetic nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium became dominant, crops depended on biological cycles. Nutrients moved slowly through organic matter, microorganisms, roots, and residues. Losses were limited. Efficiency was high. When fertilizers entered the system, everything accelerated. Plants no longer had to negotiate with microbes. Soil organisms lost their central role. Organic matter became less important. Natural nutrient recycling weakened. At first, this looked like progress. Yields jumped, growth became predictable, farming became controllable, but over time, a silent shift occurred. Soils adapted to constant external feeding. Biology declined because it was no longer necessary for survival. Carbon stocks fell, structure weakened, roots became shallow. The system became chemically efficient but biologically poor. This created a new problem: dependency. Once soil loses its biological engine, removing fertilizer does not reduce yields slightly. It collapses them. Farmers become locked into a cycle. Low biology, right pointing arrow; low natural nutrient supply, right pointing arrow; more fertilizer, right pointing arrow; weaker biology, right pointing arrow; even more fertilizer. Each year, higher doses are required to achieve the same result. Research shows that fertilizer use efficiency declines as soil health deteriorates. More nitrogen is lost to the air as gas. More phosphorus is fixed into unavailable forms. More potassium leaches away. Only a fraction of what is applied ends up in the plant. The rest becomes pollution. Nitrates contaminate groundwater. Phosphorus feeds algal blooms. Nitrous oxide warms the climate. Soil salinity increases. Microbial diversity decreases further. The farmer pays twice. First for the fertilizer, then for the damage it indirectly causes. This is not because fertilizers are evil. It is because they were used to replace biology instead of supporting it. In healthy soils, small fertilizer inputs amplify biological activity. Microbes multiply, roots grow deeper, nutrient cycles become stronger. In degraded soils, fertilizers act like life support machines. They keep the system alive, but not healthy. Economic pressure reinforces the trap. Input suppliers profit from volume. Short-term yield metrics dominate decisions. Land rental systems reward immediate output. Credit systems demand predictable harvests. There is little room for multi-year soil recovery. So the cycle continues. More chemicals, higher costs, lower resilience, and a dangerous illusion forms. Fields that depend heavily on fertilizers look productive. Until something goes wrong. A drought reduces uptake. Heavy rain washes nutrients away. Fuel prices spike, supply chains break. Suddenly, yields collapse, not because the farmer failed, but because the system was built without a safety net. Nature was removed from the equation. In some regions, this dependency has reached extreme levels. Crops receive more nitrogen in one season than natural ecosystems cycle in decades. Yet yields no longer increase proportionally. The curve flattens, costs rise, profit shrinks, so farmers apply more, and the soil weakens further. This is not sustainability, it is controlled exhaustion. In the next part, the focus shifts to places where this cycle is being reversed. Regions where farmers deliberately rebuilt soil biology, where productivity increased while fertilizer use decreased, and where agriculture stopped behaving like an industrial factory and started behaving like an ecosystem again. Not every agricultural system is trapped in decline. In several regions of the world, farmers reached a breaking point. Input costs became unsustainable, yields stagnated, soils lost structure, water infiltration collapsed, profit margins disappeared. Instead of adding more chemicals, some groups changed direction. They stopped treating soil as a container. They started treating it as infrastructure. In Brazil, parts of Argentina, Australia, and the United States, large-scale producers adopted systems based on minimal disturbance, permanent soil cover, and biological restoration. The change was not ideological. It was economic. No-till farming reduced mechanical damage. Crop residues protected the surface. Roots remained active year-round. Organic matter slowly increased. Microbial populations recovered. Water infiltration improved. In southern Brazil, long-term trials showed that after 10 to 15 years of continuous no-till with cover crops, soil organic carbon increased significantly, compaction layers weakened, and fertilizer efficiency improved. Farmers applied less nitrogen yet harvested more grain. In Argentina's Pampas, producers who integrated diverse rotations and reduced tillage reported lower fuel costs, lower fertilizer requirements, and greater yield stability during drought years. In Australia, where soils are naturally fragile, regenerative practices restored structure in degraded wheat fields. Some farms doubled water infiltration rates within a decade. In the United States, large corn and soybean operations began measuring soil carbon as a productivity indicator. Fields with higher biological activity consistently required fewer inputs to reach the same yields. The pattern repeated. When soil biology recovered, roots grew deeper, nutrients recycled faster, disease pressure dropped, water stress decreased, yield variability shrank, the system became predictable again. But not through control, through balance. These farmers did not abandon technology. They changed how it was used. GPS systems guided controlled traffic lanes to reduce compaction. Sensors optimized fertilizer timing instead of increasing dosage. Seeders were redesigned to preserve residues. Data was used to monitor soil health, not only output. Technology shifted from domination to coordination. The transition was not instant. The first years were difficult. Yields sometimes dipped. Costs shifted from chemicals to management. Knowledge became more important than products. But after recovery began, something rare happened in modern agriculture. Profit increased while inputs decreased. Risk declined. Land value rose. Farms became more resilient to climate extremes. Not because nature was conquered, because it was reactivated. This contradicted decades of assumptions. That soil improvement was slow. That productivity required chemicals. That industrial systems could not be biological. Reality proved otherwise. But these examples remain exceptions, not the rule. Most agricultural systems are still optimized for speed, volume, and short-term yield. So the question becomes unavoidable. If restoration works, why is it not mainstream? The answer lies in incentives. Modern agriculture rewards immediate output. Soil restoration rewards patience. Markets measure tons per hectare, not ecosystem stability. Credit systems finance inputs, not regeneration. Education focuses on chemistry, not biology. And the cost of degradation is delayed. It appears years later, often when the farmer has moved on. The next part explores how technology could accelerate restoration instead of destruction. What tools actually help, which innovations rebuild soil instead of exhausting it, and how the future of agriculture may depend less on chemicals and more on data-guided ecosystems. Technology is not the enemy of sustainable agriculture. Misuse is. For decades, innovation focused on speed, scale, and control. Bigger machines, faster operations, higher chemical precision, more extraction, very little focused on regeneration. Now that soil degradation has become economically visible, technology is slowly changing direction. Not toward replacing nature, toward understanding it. Modern sensors can measure soil moisture at multiple depths. Not just the surface, but the active root zone. This allows irrigation systems to follow biological demand instead of calendar schedules. Other sensors estimate organic matter, respiration rates, and microbial activity. Farmers no longer have to guess whether soil is alive. They can measure it. Satellite imagery detects early stress patterns invisible to the human eye. It shows where roots struggle, where compaction limits growth, where infiltration fails. Instead of applying fertilizer uniformly, inputs can be targeted only where biology is weak. Controlled traffic systems reduce compaction dramatically. Machines follow the same narrow lanes every season. The rest of the field remains untouched. In some systems, this alone increases root depth by more than 40%. Seed technology has also changed. Breeding programs now select for root architecture, not only grain size. Varieties are developed to cooperate with fungi, not replace them. Deeper roots stabilize soil. Finer roots feed microorganisms. Biological products, once dismissed, are now tested at industrial scale. Mycorrhizal inoculants, nitrogen-fixing bacteria, carbon-based amendments. Not as miracles, as reinforcements. Data platforms integrate weather, soil, and plant signals into single management systems. Farmers can see when soil respiration drops, when microbial activity peaks, when nutrient release is biologically driven. This shifts decision-making from reactive to strategic. But technology alone is not enough. Without changes in mindset, the same tools can destroy faster. Precision agriculture can apply chemicals more efficiently, or it can reduce dependence on them. Autonomous machinery can compact fields 24 hours a day, or it can eliminate unnecessary passes. AI can maximize short-term yield, or long-term soil stability. The direction depends on design goals. Some farms already operate under a new model. They measure success by yield stability, input efficiency, carbon accumulation, water infiltration, root depth, biological diversity. Yield remains important, but it is no longer the only metric. These farms behave less like factories, more like managed ecosystems. They are not fragile. They absorb shocks. They adapt. They evolve. The paradox is that this approach is not primitive. It is more complex than industrial agriculture. It requires more data, more observation, more understanding, less blind force. It treats soil as a system, not a surface. And systems respond to information better than to pressure. The future of agriculture will not be decided by who owns the biggest machines. It will be decided by who understands the underground network, who designs technology to support it, who rebuilds what decades of efficiency destroyed. In the final part, everything comes together. What modern agriculture must become, what happens if it does not change, and why soil, not machinery, will determine the next century of food production. Modern agriculture stands at a crossroads. One path continues the current trajectory: bigger machines, higher chemical doses, thinner margins, weaker soils, greater vulnerability to climate shocks. Production remains high for a while, but stability declines, costs rise, land degrades, food systems become fragile. The other path is quieter, less visible, more complex. It treats soil as the foundation of productivity, not as a disposable medium. It accepts that technology cannot replace biology. It understands that efficiency without resilience is temporary. This model does not reject modern tools. It redefines their purpose. Machines become precise, not heavy. Chemistry becomes supportive, not dominant. Data becomes ecological, not only economic. Farming becomes management of living systems, not control of inert matter. In this model, soil is not repaired after damage. It is protected from damage. Roots are encouraged to grow deep. Organic matter is increased every season. Microbial networks are rebuilt. Water infiltration becomes a natural function again. Yields do not explode overnight, but they stabilize. Costs fall. Risk declines. Profit becomes predictable. Land gains value. Food production becomes durable. This transition will not be easy. It challenges decades of training. It threatens established industries. It requires new metrics of success. It forces agriculture to think in decades instead of quarters. But the alternative is already visible. Fields that require more fertilizer every year. Crops that collapse under mild stress. Soils that repel water. Farmers trapped in rising debt. Regions losing productivity despite advanced technology. Civilizations do not fail when machines break. They fail when their productive land fails. Every historical collapse involved soil erosion, salinization, exhaustion. Modern agriculture is technologically advanced, but biologically fragile. That contradiction cannot last forever. The farms that survive the next century will not be the ones with the largest equipment fleets. They will be the ones with living soil. The invisible infrastructure beneath the surface will